Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto inherits Zabuza's sword and secretly marries with Hana, part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The impact of Naruto's fist slamming into Haku's Hunter Nin mask flew the ice user through his own mirror constructs. Haku didn't know what power this blonde boy had, but it far surpassed his own, and his master's. Ashamed he had failed his master Zabuza, Haku struggled to stand on his own 2 feet again to accept death. Naruto, still in his berserker rage, flew at Haku with every intention of killing him and avenge his teammate. Haku knew it was pointless to attempt to dodge and he waited for death, as his mask began to slide off his face in pieces due to the damage from battle. Haku was confused. Why wasn't he dead? Opening his eyes he saw a stunned Naruto, a fist an inch from crushing his skull. Soon the initial shock wore off and the demon container needed answers right now. Why you're the B-boy from the forest. Why are you helping that creep Zabuza? Naruto stammered out. You should know why, Naruto-san. Zabuza-sama saved me from the darkness in return for being his tool. He told me to help him fight you, and I did. Haku told Naruto while trying to stay standing. Naruto definitely understood, but he didn't like it. The boy in front of him was so similar, so it was scary. Both were hated by their homes, but were saved. For Naruto it was the Sandaime Hokage, Tenten and Iruka-sensei. Was it really Haku's fault his savior was a less than pleasant individual? The demon container's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of what seemed to be chirping birds. Both boys looked over to see Kakashi about to kill Zabuza with a Raiden jutsu. I am sorry Naruto-san, but it seems like I can still be of some use left to Zabuza-sama. Haku said, while making a single ice mirror. Haku stepped into the single mirror made of ice and it allowed him to speed toward the path of Kakashi's assassination jutsu. Meanwhile, Naruto subconsciously pumped some Demoisi chakra into his legs and ran after Haku. He couldn't let the boy who was so similar to him get killed. The smell of flesh melting filled the air. Standing in front of Zabuza were Naruto and Haku, Kakashi's fist sticking out of Naruto, and Haku's back. A fatal wound for both boys, their blood intermingling while their hearts were still able to beat. Kakashi looked on in horror. He had just lost another one of his teammates, his own subordinate, accidentally killed by his own hand. Why did Naruto do it? Kakashi-sensei. Sorry, Haku, like me, Naruto whispered to his sensei. After speaking his final words, Naruto slumped over, still being held up by Kakashi's arm that was now being removed from the chests of the 2 ninja. Zabuza began to chuckle, snapping Kakashi from his thoughts. Well, it seems that Haku probed a useful tool after all. Shame he had to die to serve his purpose, thought. Zabuza praised. Clapping accompanied the arrival of Getu and his thugs. Well, it looks like the demon of the mist is not much of a demon after all. Oh, and your little friend died too, serves the brat right. Oh well, it doesn't matter anyway, we were going to kill you both after the bridge builder died anyway. Get him, boys. Getu ordered. The men began to charge but stopped when a spiral of red demonic chakra spilled forth from the blonde that was lying next to Haku's corpse. All looked on in horror as the sound of cracking bones accompanied the hole in the boy's destroyed chest being filled with new flesh. The boy seemed to grow taller before their eyes, his hair lightening to a bright icy blue and becoming wild. Fangs lengthened, nails became claws, and the whisker marks adorning the boy's face became thicker and deeper. Eventually the chakra died down and the boy struggled to his feet. The bandits were terrified by the cold killer look the Jinchuriki's slitted red eyes held for them. Playtime. The Jinchuriki yelled out at them. In a blur the boy seemingly vanished before a thug suddenly found a clawed hand piercing his chest. Naruto ripped his hand out from the now lifeless body and ducked below 2 incoming swords. With a swipe of his claws one of the attackers had his chest slashed open. Turning around the demon container lunged at the other's throat, biting and tearing the man's windpipe out. While the other thugs stood still, shocked by the brutality, Naruto began a flurry of swipes and spins, removing heads, limbs, and destroying torsos with brutal efficiency. By the dozens men were being slaughtered by the genin. Kakashi was officially afraid of his student at this point, hoping that the demo fox had not escaped. Well, I guess we don't need to fight anymore, so could your dogs let me God? I wanna kill Gato before your brat gets him first. Zabuza said, prepared to kill the man who dared try to cheat him out of payment for a job. Kakashi nodded dumbly and unsummoned his nin gods. Zabuza was gravely wounded by still joined Naruto in slaughtering the bandits. For every bandit the demon of the mist took down, he was impaled by another weapon. Gato was horrified, his army was being reduced to nothing before his eyes. After a few quick moments that seemed like an eternity, Zabuza and Naruto were standing before the short shipping tycoon. Zabuza held his arm in front of Naruto to stop him, and the boy managed to calm down from his bloodlust. Back in control, Naruto had no idea of what he had just done. Sorry Brad, this bastard is mine. Zabuza told the demon container while holding his arm out to stop the boy from trying anything. Zabuza grabbed his massive blade and struck. And so the reign of Gato ended by his head rolling off his shoulders. Satisfied, Zabuza collapsed and was caught by Naruto. Hey brat, I'm not gonna make it, but I'd like to see Haku one last time before I die, Zabuza whispered to the genin. He didn't have the strength for much else. The boy nodded and carried the badly bleeding missing nin toward his fallen friend. He settled Zabuza down gently. Using what strength he could, Zabuza raised a hand to touch face of his apprentice. Haku, I know you are going to a much better place than me, but I wish that I could join you. I'm sorry I treated you like a tool, you were like a son to me. Goodbye, Haku-kun, and you, brat. Zabuza turned only his eyes to Naruto, who was standing on the other side of Haku's body now. Take my blade, the Kubikiribocho. Use it, well, don't come visit me, too soon you, got that? Later brat. Zabuza whispered out the last two words as his eyes slowly shut in death's embrace. Momochi Zabuza, demon of the mist, was dead. Naruto grasped the handle of the Kubikiribocho and held it out in front of him in awe. The Zanbato was incredibly heavy, but with chakra flowing through the muscles of his arms he was able to at least carry it. Next, Naruto walked over to the remnants of Haku's mask and blaced both halves into his empty weapons pouch. Naruto then noticed that Sakura was wailing over a now awakened Sasuke, and Kakashi was behind him. Naruto, do you have any idea what just happened? Is the seal okay? Am I even still talking to Naruto? Kakashi asked of his student, on guard in case he was attacked. Oi, Kakashi-sensei, it's me, no idea what happened thought. I remember trying to save Haku, and the next thing I recall was Gato was dead. I think the seal is okay. Naruto explained to Kakashi. Kakashi accepted that for now. He was glad that his students were indeed okay. Naruto did not remember him slaughtering over 100 men, and neither Sasuke or Sakura had seen what happened. Naruto had enough problems interacting with others, the last thing he needed is his teammates completely terrified of him. The copy ninja was intrigued that Zabuza passed his sword onto Naruto, although the boy had grown enough to potentially use it. That probably had something to do with the fox, but Naruto didn't know what happened and Kakashi didn't have the ability to investigate further until they got back to Konoha. Kakashi-sensei, why does everything seem smaller? Asked Naruto with his head tilted to the side in confusion. Well, that proved it was still Naruto. Only he could not notice that he had grown over a head taller than he used to be, or how he was completely covered with blood. Kakashi hoped Naruto would think that it was his own and Haku's. Naruto, after you tried to save Haku, demonic chakra come out of the seal and healed you, but it also seemed to break your bones and make you taller. I am not really sure, but I think it was because of your tenant. We'll have to talk with the Hokage about this when we get back. Kakashi explained, mumbling to himself that he didn't sign up for this when he decided to take on a genin team. Sure, Kakashi-sensei. Hey sensei, could you help me bury Haku and Zabuza? They deserve at least that much, and I doubt Sakura-chan or Sasuke would help. Naruto asked, praying his sensei would say yes, to which he only received a nod from the masked Jonin. Sakura and Sasuke had both fallen unconscious. Sakura, in relief for her Sasuke-kun being alive, and Sasuke due to Sakura squeezing him as hard as she did with his injuries. After Kakashi agreed to help Naruto, he grabbed both of his other students and used Shunshin to take him back to Tazuna's house. After a few moments, Kakashi returned and helped Naruto with the bodies. Away from the bridge, Naruto led Kakashi to the clearing in the forest where he met and befriended Haku after explaining their lives. Making some simple markers for their graves using some tree branches and rope, he and Kakashi lowered the two bodies into the graves. Naruto placed the right half of Haku's mask into the grave with the boy's body. Zabuza, Haku, I'm sorry it had to end this way. I know for sure that had we met under different circumstances we would have been friends. I promise now on your dewafs that I will make you BTH proud. Zabuza, thanks to you I finally realize how stupid I've been. Before this mission I thought that being a ninja was all about flashy moves and being cool. I realize now that this is a dangerous and serious lifestyle, and my life could end at any moment. I hope I can do my best to grow strong. Haku, you showed me that I can only be truly strong when protecting someone I love. I'll keep both of you with me always. Naruto spoke to the bodies, hoping Zabuza and Haku could hear him. Naruto took the other half of Haku's mask and placed it over the left side of his face, attaching it with some chakra. Haku, you will be my armor, you will help protect me and all who I love. Naruto swore. Grabbing the giant blade, Kubikiribocho, he held it over Zabuza's body, chakra flowing through his arm. Zabuza, your sword will help me stop those who threaten my friends and allies. Naruto said while slashing the massive blade once. Having said what he needed to say, Naruto pulled the half mask off his face, storing it in his pouch, and began to cover the bodies of Zabuza and Haku. Kakashi stood behind his student radiating pride, although he knew Naruto would never be the same after this mission, but he didn't realize how much the deaths of Zabuza and Haku had changed the Jinchuriki. Tazuna's house. Kakashi and his student returned to Tazuna's house late in the evening. Everyone had gone to sleep after the day's events. Kakashi and Naruto were both exhausted as well. The boy bid Kakashi a good night, setting his pouch containing the mask and the Zanbato next to him and went to sleep. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto awoke in unfamiliar surroundings. It appeared to be a dark sewer. The boy began exploring the slightly flooded pathways and entered a room with a large gate. On the doors of the gate was a slip of paper bearing the kanji word for seal. As he neared the gate, a claw shot out from the gate, almost taking his head off. Hello, human. Welcome to my humble abode. An ominous voice rang out. KQB, what are you doing here? Naruto stammered out. We're in your mind, Yubaka. I need to explain some things to you, and this was easier than me trying to rip my way through this impassable seal and talking to you out there. The QB told Naruto in a sarcastic voice. You sure as hell do. What the hell happened on the bridge? Naruto ordered to the source of his suffering in the village. Well, you got the brilliant idea to get a hand shoved through your chest. I had to fix the damage. My regeneration works through rapid multiplication of cells near the damage area. In the process of healing the gaping hole, I guess some of the other humans' blood was multiplied as well. Turns out that other brat had a strong dominant bloodline, and using his cells to repair you caused a chain reaction leading to most of your body being altered to accompany the genetic material of the bloodline. I took some liberties to alter you a bit while I was at it. I had to remove any impurities of the bloodline that occurred over the generations, as well as made you taller, and increased your muscle mass a bit. You embarrass me still, but not quite as much as before. The fox explained as he looked over his handiwork. Naruto stood there for a while trying to process all of this information. He had a bloodline. The QB directly altered his body without his permission. How could the QB do that? When you used my chakra as much as you did, I gained some control of your body. Please do so much more often. It was rather fun helping and watching you slaughter all of those puny men on that bridge. Here, I'll let you see, since you don't remember all the fun you had. The QB told Naruto, reading the boy's thoughts and chuckling as the memories of the slaughter now replaying for the boy. I couldn't have. You made me do it. The now traumatized boy muttered out. I did no such thing, human. You used my chakra. You wanted those men dead. I just helped a little. Now get out of here and let me out more often to play. The last order barked out before kicking Naruto out of his own mind and back to the waking world. Tsuna's house. Naruto awoke sweating profusely and quickly took in a large breath of air. That was too real to be a dream. He never remembered his dreams, but whatever happened was not a dream. There was no way he was going to go to sleep again, so he slipped on his backpack, grabbed his weapon pouch and grabbed Zabuza's sword. Immediately after enter the forest outside the house, the memories of what he had done returned once more, causing the demon container to vomit at the brutality of it all. I can't let that ever happen again, so I need to become strong enough to not need the demon. I doubt I can ever forgive myself for what I have done, but I need to learn from my mistakes. If I really do have Haku's bloodline, I should probably see if I can find where he and Zabuza were staying. Since Haku was the last in his bloodline, he probably made notes as he developed his own techniques with it. I won't let myself be the idiot any longer. I'm going to learn how to use my new power and protect Konoha and its people. Naruto thought, his eyes showing his old fierce determination. Naruto recalled that Kiba could increase his senses by putting chakra into his eyes, ears or nose. Naruto attempted pushing chakra to his nose and the result was rather overwhelming. I need to remember to work on chakra control more, that was way too much. Naruto noted, having received such a massive boost to his sense of smell he almost passed out from sensory overload. The next attempt was more manageable. He pulled out Haku's mask, sniffing it before putting it away and attempting to find a scent trail. After wandering around for a half hour, he picked up a trail. The Jinchuriki quickly followed the scent to Zabuza and Haku's hideout. The place was rather simple, but he knew it wasn't a permanent residence. Despite this, it was rather well put together. He found Zabuza's room first. The decorations were non-existent, but he did make a rather interesting find. In a drawer was a scroll of Suidan techniques, most likely stolen from Kurigakure, as well as a scroll depicting his kenjutsu style and tips on his silent killing technique, as well as a storage scroll which he just placed them all into his backpack. The blue-haired boy looked down at his shredded clothes and searched for something to wear due to being around Zabuza's height now. He found some couple pairs of basic black pants and black muscle shirts. Naruto put the new clothes on and stored the rest in his backpack, after which he continued his search of the room. After finding nothing else of note, the boy entered the other room. Haku's room held much more warmth than Zabuza's. There were a few pieces of furniture outside of the bed. Naruto felt bad for stealing from these two men, but he needed any help he could get. He knew he was weak. He only beat Haku because of the damn fox. Naruto never wanted to use the fox's power again after learning what it let the fox do, and what he did when he used it. Shortly after that thought, he found a chest containing several scrolls. Inside the scrolls were some very excellent finds. Not only did one scroll contain notes on Haku's bloodline, but there was one on using one-handed seals as well. There were several scrolls on human anatomy, with annotations, most likely made by Haku himself as well. Placing all of the scrolls into his backpack on top of his new clothes, he turned and noticed his reflection in the mirror. Holy hell, my hair is blue. Well, this is different, Naruto said out loud, wondering when the surprises were going to cease. After a few more minutes of looking around, Naruto exited the hideout where he noticed a new scent, that of a fox. It wasn't the Kyuubi as it was sealed inside Naruto, so it couldn't have a smell, could it? Curious, he moved around the house to investigate. Turning a corner, he found a black fox with two tails tied to a tree. Must be another pet of Haku's like that rabbit was. I should let it go, otherwise it would starve. Naruto thought. He had a soft spot for animals since they never treated him any different from other people. After removing the rope around the fox's neck, he expected it to go running off into the woods. Instead, it just stared at him for a bit before the silence was broken. "Thanks, mister," a chipper feminine voice said. Naruto jumped at the sound. He didn't sense anyone nearby. Placing his hand on the handle his blade, he started whipping his head side to side looking for the source of the voice. "Who's there?" "Who said that?" Naruto demanded. "I did, silly. Look down in front of you," the voice from before said. "I only see a fox," Naruto stated, eyes still shifting slightly and his body still tense. "That's because I am a fox, duh," the voice said, the fox looking up at him, what could be classified a grin on its face. "Strange question, but how the hell are you able to talk?" Naruto asked, slowly questioning if he was going crazy or not. Well, I'm just doing what I normally do. Maybe it's you who can understand me like I can understand you, even though we don't speak the same language," the fox said, sitting in front of him while the tail swayed slightly. "Well, I guess Kiba can understand Akamaru when he barks. This is probably because of the Kyuubi bastard," Naruto concluded. Great, now he could talk to foxes. While he had nothing against it or anything, he began to wonder how many more surprises were going to hit him. "I see. So what's your name?" "I'm Uzumaki Naruto," Naruto said, introducing himself with a slight bow. "Haku-kun called me Koko. I smell him on you. Where is he?" greeted the newly named Koko, perking up hoping to hear about Haku while looking around to see if he was near. Koko watched as Naruto's face fell at the mention of Haku. Whatever the boy in front of her was going to say, it wasn't good. Haku was very nice to her, but she did wish Haku would let her fight alongside him even if his kind was endangered. "I'm very sorry, Koko. Haku is dead," Naruto sadly told the fox in front of him. Koko was surprised that Naruto pulled her into a hug. The Nibi foxes were hunted down after the Kyuubi's attack, them all thinking that they were spawns of the Kyuubi itself and not wanted to have a repeat if any of them grew up, so she wasn't used to too many people being kind to her. Koko was found as a little kid by Haku and Zabuza on their journey, and Haku decided to keep her and she grew to like Haku. She would even keep Haku entertained whenever Zabuza left for a while to do business. Now that Haku was dead, where was she supposed to go? She supposed she could try living in the wild, but she was afraid she'd be found and killed like many of her kind before her. Maybe this boy Naruto would let her come with him. "Thank you, Naruto-san. I have only just met you, but you have shown me great kindness. I would like to come with you if you'd let me. I've always wanted to be a nin fox since Haku found me, but he always kept me as a pet instead of an ally who could aid him in battle." Koko asked with hope gleaming in her eyes that he would agree. Well, I guess that would be fine. I should warn you, thought, people at home don't like foxes very much. Almost 13 years ago, the Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked Konoha and killed a lot of people before it was finally sealed in me. Most people see me as a demon sometimes, and decide to take their pain out on me, so I wouldn't want to put you into danger like that, especially with you being a fox with two tails," Naruto explained to the Kitsune, not realizing he had just told a complete stranger that he was the container of the Kyuubi, even if it was just a fox. "I'm glad for your concern, but I hope you will find that we can protect each other. I may not look like it, but I am strong. I won't let anyone hurt you," Koko promised Naruto. She didn't mention the Kyuubi since she imagined that if the village was hurting him for it, that it would be a touchy subject. "Thanks, Koko. I won't let anyone hurt you either. Let's go do some training. I can't sleep, and we can't go into battle together if we don't practice, can we?" Naruto asked rhetorically, wearing a smirk on his face. Naruto received a yip of approval from his new partner, the two of them moved quickly to a clearing near Tazuna's house. Naruto formed a few clones and ran through a few different drills to work on his teamwork with Koko. He found out that his new Nin Fox companion was very adept at finding his shadow clones and sneaking up on them. While she didn't have the physical strength to do a whole lot of damage, she was very fast and had something Naruto never expected. She was able to breathe a little fire, though it tired her out quickly. While Koko did seem to have decent stamina, it couldn't hold a candle to Naruto's, but then again, who could? After taking all of the training, she curled up by a tree for a nap. While she slept, Naruto began practicing the katas so he could use his newly obtained weapon in battle. This was when he learned that he needed to train a lot more first before he could actually use the blade. So he chose the first few katas and ran through them again and again, making vertical and horizontal slashes through the air. The sword was still very heavy to him, but he figured if he kept practicing, it wouldn't be a problem for him and he might be able to find an advantage out of the excessive weight. As time continued to move forward, Naruto's muscles aching from the strenuous work, he looked into the sky to see the sun slowly was making its ascension in the sky. This gave Naruto enough light for him to look over the other scrolls he had taken. The blue-haired boy figured that it would be best to work on the techniques that were not part of his bloodline, and learn anatomy. He couldn't remember if they taught much about it at the academy, and he was mad that he didn't take his education seriously. Naruto read about the basics of the human body for an hour before his boundless energy made it hard for him to sit still and read. He would have to work on his patience later, especially if he was going to use the silent killing technique, but for now he needed to do something else. Grabbing the sweetened scroll he found in Zabuza's room, he quickly looked at the first jutsu in the scroll. It was a jutsu he knew all too well thanks to the mission. Kurigakure no Jutsu, Hidden Mist Jutsu, was a D-rank technique that let him pull water from the air into a dense mist. According to the scroll, it could be used anywhere, but it worked best near water. Always enjoying a challenge, Naruto stayed by Koko to practice the jutsu. Naruto focused on the sur around him and imagined the air around him thickening while he did the hand signs. The result of his attempt were rather pitiful, but he didn't expect to get it on the first try either. He kept working at it until Koko finally woke up around 7 a.m. by the sun's reference. She woke up to a thick enough mist that she could only see a few feet in front of her. Naruto-kun, was this your doing? Koko asked, trying to find Naruto since his scent was everywhere. She finally found him using her hearing and he had his megawatt smile on. You bet, Koko. I've been practicing for hours. The others are probably up by now. I say we go meet up with them for some breakfast. I'll even introduce you to my team and the family we're staying with. The blue-haired ninja told his new companion. In truth, the smile was a mask, well, half of one. He was happy he was getting the jutsu down, but was still disgusted with himself about how he killed the men on the bridge. He kept smiling as he thought it over, keeping to himself so he would worry the kitsune. The air began to clear as Naruto deactivated the jutsu and he could see the clearing fully. Koko quickly ran up his leg to his shoulder and he scratched her ear for a few seconds before bending down and picking up his things. Together they sped off towards Tazuna's house. As they got closer, Naruto could smell breakfast cooking already and went inside, announcing his arrival. Hey guys, I'm back. And I've found a little friend. The energetic ninja yelled out. Koko couldn't help but shake her head at her new partner's antics before following him into the house. Tsunami walked out of the kitchen to greet the blonde boy, only to find no blonde on his head. Hey there, Naruto-kun, Tsunami stammered out, trying to figure out who was now standing in front of her. It looked like Naruto, only he was taller and his hair now ice blue instead of blonde. Oh, hey Tsunami-san. Why are you looking at me like that? Oh yeah, that's right. Only Kakashi has seen the new me. I'll explain at breakfast, so I only have to say it once. Naruto said while rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Tsunami nodded dumbly before going back to making breakfast, trying to figure out exactly what happened to Naruto. Said boy placed his Zanbato against the wall, careful so as not to scratch up the floor, before sitting down at the table. Coco walked up beside the blue-haired boy and decided to curl up in his lap, both of them waiting for breakfast to be read. Breakfast. Sakura and Sasuke grumbled sleepily as they slowly walked downstairs to breakfast. Sasuke was wondering where his idiot teammate was since the dead last was gone before he woke, and he knew Naruto was a heavy sleeper. His question was replaced with another question after he saw a taller, older-looking version of Naruto but with pale blue hair sitting at the table with a black fox sitting his lap. Sasuke was about to demand to know who he was but was beaten by someone much louder. "Who the hell are you?" Sakura screeched, hoping he wasn't there to hurt her Sasuke-kun. Only Naruto noticed the cringe of the fox from the loud noise. "Oi, Sakura-chan, Sasuke. It's me Naruto. I know I look different but I'll explain once everyone is down here, and if you could please be a little quieter, we haven't even had breakfast yet," Naruto said, as he softly petted Coco. Sakura decided to ignore that last comment and continue, "You better you baka. And what with the fox? It's all part of my explanation," Naruto told Sakura, not wanting to repeat himself several times over. Neither of them really wanted to accept that, but they knew Naruto was very stubborn so they didn't bother arguing about it. Both genin were trying to take in Naruto's new appearance while they waited for everyone else. He was much taller, and seemed more muscular than before, but not overly muscular. He was wearing new clothes, but they just figured he bought them in town before any of them got up. The other obvious difference about Naruto was his hair. To them he was no longer a blonde idiot but now a blue-haired idiot instead. Sakura idly thought that Naruto was much better looking now, but still refused to think that he could compare to her Sasuke-kun. Proud of her loyalty to the emo Uchiha, she turned to him and smiled brightly. Sasuke ignored the girl and figured that while the dead last may have gotten bigger and had a dye job, the idiot was pathetic compared to himself. He was however curious about why Zabuza's sword was against the wall near Naruto though. He could use it to kill him, decided that he must have it. After a few minutes breakfast was done cooking and everyone else in the household joined the three genin at the table. Naruto grew rather nervous at the stares from the house, being used to people that stared at him would end up attacking him. Rubbing the back of his head nervously while giving them his big patented fox grin, he figured he should start explaining. "I guess you all are wondering why I look different, huh?" Naruto asked, already knowing what their answer would be. He received nods from everyone, and took note that Kakashi was paying attention to him, probably waiting to hear his explanation. "Okay. Well, I guess during the fight on the bridge I activated a bloodline. I'm not really sure what I can do yet other than my physical changes." Fox here, picking Coco up to show everyone, as Coco. "I found her in the woods wandering around since I wasn't able to sleep. She likes me so I thought I'd keep her," Naruto explained, trying to leave out as many details as possible while still keeping to the truth as well. He just was hoping they'd take the explanation at face value and drop the subject entirely. Kakashi knew his student wasn't telling everything, but he probably didn't want to tell his teammates too much information. He was very curious about the fox as well, especially since he had never seen a fox with more than one tail. "Hey dead last, what is Zabuza's sword doing here?" the Uchiha prodigy asked. "Oh yeah, before he died Zabuza told me he wanted me to learn to use his sword," Naruto stated, acting as if it was no big deal. To say that the Uchiha was mad at this was quite an understatement. "What? How could a dead last like you learn to use a sword? Zabuza should have given his sword to me. Give me the sword dead last, I can use it to kill him," an angry Sasuke yelled out. "No," Naruto stated simply, while petting Coco. "What?" asked Sasuke, getting even angrier by the second. "I said no. Zabuza wanted me to have the sword and I will honor his dying wish," Naruto stated again, this time looking the Uchiha in the eyes, hoping he'd get the picture. Being the last surviving Uchiha, Sasuke didn't really know the meaning of the word no, since he was basically given anything he asked for. Enraged at his teammate, Sasuke jumped out of his seat. He ran toward the sword. Everyone was surprised at his actions and didn't move to stop him, including Naruto. It didn't matter in the end. As soon as Sasuke's hand wrapped around the grip of the massive blade, spikes shot out, piercing his hand. He pulled his hand back, falling over and yelling in pain, as he clutched his injured hand to his chest. Naruto, what did you do to Sasuke-kun? Sakura yelled at Naruto, punching him in the head. Koko say Sakura's hit connect and she growled at her as he tails trashed around a bit. She just met his teammates and she already knew she didn't like them. Naruto was sort of used to getting hit by now. Whenever Sakura was upset, what? I didn't do anything to him. Maybe it just didn't like him or something. Naruto said, rubbing where she had him. He was hoping that she would at least be happy that he had activated his bloodline, or well absorbed it, and obtained a sword, but he finally figured that there was no reason to try to impress her anymore. She only had eyes for the arrogant bastard that was rolling on the floor clutching his hand. Kakashi was rather ashamed of the actions of the genin. He expected them to act much better than they had. He could also see the hurt in Naruto's eyes from his teammates not accepting him, and he knew that he was alright, filled with enough hurt. Sasuke, Sakura, that's enough. The sword is Naruto's, so don't try to steal it again. Do I make myself clear? Sakura, the sword most likely has a self-defense seal on it, so only those allowed to wield it. Naruto made no action himself to hurt Sasuke, so hitting him and blaming him for it was uncalled for. Now then, I'd like to talk with Naruto outside for a bit. Kakashi scolded as both him and Naruto stepped outside, with Koko following behind Naruto. Breakfast continued as normally as it could, following events like that. Kakashi led Naruto a good distance away from the house before stopping and turning to his student. Alright Naruto, I know for a fact you won't tell the whole story, but I need to know exactly what happened. Kakashi demanded. Naruto sighed. He figured he would have to explain this to Kakashi and the Hokage later, though it didn't mean he wanted to tell them. Okay Kakashi-sensei, I'll tell you what the Kyuubi told me and what happened afterwards. Naruto said, waiting for the reaction to this bit of news before continuing. Kakashi's eye widened at the mention of the Kyuubi, which didn't go unnoticed by Koko or Naruto. Naruto was in touch with the demon inside him. This could be very bad. Yeah, I met the Kyuubi. He's a bit of an. But he was the cause of all my changes. He used Haku's blood to help heal the hole in my chest, which led to me getting a purified form of Haku's bloodline. Apparently using the chakra of the Kyuubi allows him much more control over my body versus the already non-existent control he has the rest of the time. I never want to use that bastard's chakra again. I know what he did to those thugs on the bridge yesterday. Naruto said, whispering the last part while looking down as the events played again in his mind. A reassuring hand on his shoulder from Kakashi helped him to continue his story. After walking up from the meeting with him, I wasn't capable of going back to sleep. I thought since I had Haku's bloodline I should see if he had any notes on his technique, wherever he and Zabuza had been staying. I tried to use a sense-enhancing technique from a friend of mine, Inuzuka Kiba. He had mentioned it in class and I found the place. I found his notes and some clothes to change into since mine were just rags really. I also found Koko there. Haku was keeping her as a pet even though she told me she wanted to be a nin fox. I was hoping to make that official when we get back to Konoha. Kami knows I need at least someone I can depend on to work with if Sakura and Sasuke's actions are anything to go by. I am not too sure I can fully trust Sasuke again after his stunt, and Sakura just follows his lead no matter what. Naruto finished explaining, leaving out the information about the scrolls Zabuza had, which were all probably stolen from Kurigakure. Kakashi had noticed that Naruto didn't add the Chan to Sakura's name, but he let it slide for now. She told you? Kakashi asked, hoping to get a better clarification on that matter. Yep. I can understand what she says. I think it has something to do with my housing the QB inside me, but whatever. The Jinchuriki said, hoping he didn't have to face the demon later to figure it out. Kakashi nodded, as he filed the new information for later use. It sounded so far-fetched, but then again this was Konoha's most unpredictable ninja he was dealing with here. Normal logic just didn't seem to fit, and he didn't see any lie in Naruto's words, but he was going to have to inform the Hokage about all of this as soon as they got back. He had hoped that Naruto didn't remember what had happened on the bridge, since that could easily traumatize anyone, but now he thought he was fine. He said it was the fox and that it happened because he used his chakra, and now he seemed determined to never use his chakra. Alright Naruto, we'll have to talk with the Hokage when we get back. I agree with your decision to not use the fox's chakra. Nobody had any idea what using it would do at you, and now we have some form of an idea as to what will happen. I'm sorry about Sasuke's actions earlier. I will also be having a talk with him later about respecting the property of others. I'd ask you to give them a second chance, but I know how people are, especially you, about people who break that trust. Kakashi told his student before dismissing him. Kakashi sighed, I did not sign up for this, why do I have to have the most difficult team to work with? Kakashi thought. Naruto was glad that Kakashi was his sensei. I mean, sure, he wasn't the best at teaching, well, okay, he was pretty horrible at it, but he was a pretty good guy once you get past his tardiness and his addiction to porn. Time skip 1 week. 1 week went by as the bridge was finished due to the newly motivated workers and the large amounts of clones Naruto lent for labor. With their job now finished, Team 7 was ready to head back home to report the mission's success. Naruto had spent most of his free time practicing with his new blade, Suiten Jutsu, and Koko, who had stayed close to him cause he didn't like her companion's teammates. The other two on Naruto's team were still mad at him, despite him not doing anything, so they pretty much left him alone for the most part. After all of the goodbyes and the tear-filled goodbye from Naruto to Inari, Tazuna and his family watched the ninja that had changed so much for their village head back to Konoha. Well, the bridge is done, but it needs a super name. The elder bridge builder said. How about the Great Naruto Bridge, Oji-san? Inari suggested to his grandfather. I think that is the perfect name for it, Tazuna said as he hugged his grandson to him as they turned to the fleeting sight of Team 7. The trip back to Konoha from their mission was rather tame compared to what the team had already experienced over the last month. Without a civilian to escort somewhere, they were able to move a lot faster. However, Sakura was having problems keeping up with the quick pace that Kakashi had set. They ended up having to slow down frequently for her, which slowly was getting on everyone's nerves. Sasuke had spent most of the trip just glaring at Naruto, as if he was trying to burn a hole in the back of his head, while Sakura fawned over him. Sakura and Sasuke were even more upset at Naruto after they found out he was thinking of wearing part of Haku's mask during the missions. Kakashi for the most part had to keep his own team from fighting each other, which Sasuke had attempted on numerous occasions only to be scolded by Kakashi for attempting it. As a result, Naruto spent most of his time away from the two other genin and ran alongside Koko for the most part, training at night with her in Kubikiribocho during the evenings, and since he wasn't sleeping all that well as his nights were slowly being plagued by nightmares. At the moment, Naruto was taking a break from training with his blade when Koko asked to speak with him away from the others. Naruto-kun, it isn't my place, but something has me worried about you. Koko told Naruto, concern lacing into her voice. What is it, Koko-kan? You know you can tell me anything. Naruto told her, wondering what could have the kitsune worried. I know you aren't sleeping, it's clearly evident on your face with the bags under your eyes. I can tell you left something out when you talked with Kakashi-san that bothered you. Koko said, getting a surprised reaction from Naruto. It's just, I don't want to worry anyone. I thought I could deal with it myself, cope with it on my own, but it seems I can't. Every time I sleep I just see what I did. Naruto said as a soft whisper, ashamed and hoping that she wouldn't leave him after she found out what he had done. Just tell me what happened, Naruto-kun. Koko said, sitting down in front of her companion making sure he knew he had her undivided attention. On the bridge the Kyuubi influenced my emotions. There were so many thugs there. Kami, I killed so many of them. I slaughtered almost everyone, and worst yet I enjoyed it. Naruto explained, sitting down and hugging his legs to his chest waiting for Koko to hate him. Oh Naruto-kun, you poor thing, Koko said quickly pushing herself in between his knees and chest, it isn't your fault. All foxes know of the bloodlust of Kyuubi and how it can affect anyone. Do you want me to sleep by you when you sleep? It might help keep the nightmares away. Koko offered to the fragile boy. Naruto looked at the kitsune with a tear forming in his right eye, thank you Koko-chan. A smile ghosting over his face as he pulled her into his arms. Koko could tell that her companion was very vulnerable right now, it being his first time he'd taken a life and all. Unfortunately she didn't know how to help except be there for him. As the Genin squad continued toward home, whenever they stopped to rest Koko could be seen with Naruto. Her very presence seemed to calm him down a bit and the haunted look didn't seem to be there, or at least not as obvious. During the rest of the trip Naruto and Koko pretty much stayed to themselves, waiting for everyone to leave and do their own thing before he would pull out one of the scrolls and begin memorizing, or would grab a leaf and being elemental manipulation training with water. He had read it in the first scroll he had finished and he wanted to try it out. It was odd for Naruto, he never really liked reading, but now it gave his mind something else to do. His nightmares seemed to kept at bay with the words, and he vowed to start reading more. When they were within half a day of Konoha, Kakashi finally told them all to pick up the pace so they could get back and make their report. Within a few hours of traveling at top speed, they made it back. Halt! One of the guards at the gate said. Kakashi stepped in front of the squad, Team 7, consisting of Hitaki Kakashi as Jonin Sensei and Genin Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, and Uzumaki Naruto returning from C-rank mission. He said. The guard grabbed a clipboard and after scanning it for a few seconds gave a nod, alright you're clear to go on in and make your report to the Hokage right away, as soon as we see all of your identification. The guard said. Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke had no problem producing the information that was asked. Naruto however did not look like his id, and the guard didn't like the idea of letting a fox into Konoha either. You are not Uzumaki Naruto, and I don't know what you're trying to play at by bringing that into Konoha. Have you no respect? Demanded the first guard. He had hated the demon brat for what it had done to Konoha as well as his family. He thought the brat found another fox demon to help destroy Konoha. Naruto, having expected something like this, wasn't angry at the insult thrown at him. He had been far too used to the blind hatred of the village. But he was seething mad that they would take their hatred for him out on an innocent, like Koko. Naruto having enough did something Kakashi was surprised at. He stood up for himself. I am indeed Uzumaki Naruto. During the mission I activated a bloodline that changed me physically. Also I would appreciate it if you were not hostile towards my companion. Naruto said, his tone calm and even, though underlined with defiance. Koko, during the trip, had been working on him keeping himself level-headed like she had seen Haku do many times. Why you brat, the Chunin growled out as he made a threatening step forward. Kakashi seeing this moved in and gave his own glare that everyone knew would mean trouble. When he spoke he began to try to defuse the situation, but didn't let go of his stance. My student is correct. We will be heading to the Hokage to give an immediate report on our mission as well as update Naruto's identification. I will also be reporting this incident to the Hokage as well. Kakashi finished. He somehow managed to say the statement with a lazy tone that was also filled with venom at the same time. He refused to allow one of his students to be harassed in such a way on his watch. The guards, having no choice now, were forced to let them in. The last thing they wanted was the Hokage coming down on their heads for this incident if it went any worse. Team 7 traveled by the rooftops of the buildings to avoid any civilians for Naruto and Koko's Sake, who was currently riding on the icy blue-haired teen's shoulder. In a few minutes they were in the Hokage Tower. The Hokage was obviously expecting them as they were seen right in without even asking. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. If the Hokage was surprised at Naruto's new looks, then he hid it very well. Welcome back Team 7. I assume your mission proved to be interesting. The Sandaime asked. Kakashi stepped forward to give his mission report. He had a few details though, such as Naruto's use of the Kyuubi's chakra and his slaughtering of the thugs. The Hokage dismissed Sakura and Sasuke, telling them to come pick up their payment the next day, keeping Kakashi, Naruto, and Koko who was now sitting at attention by the teen's feet. After the door closed behind the two departing teens, the aged Kage turned his ever-wise gaze on the Jonin. Now, why don't you tell me exactly what happened on that bridge? The Hokage asked, after he quickly activated his own privacy barrier. He was expecting a lot more than what Kakashi had first given him. Naruto stepped up this time and explained his meeting with the Kyuubi, his new bloodline, obtaining Zabuza's sword and ending with the meeting of Koko. The Hokage was worried about the fox gaining control over Naruto, so he asked to see the seal so he could inspect it. After a quick inspection, and finding the seal to be perfectly intact, Hiruzen took his seat once more. Well, that is quite the tale. Obviously these details will be an S-class secret that shall never be spoken to anyone other than the Hokage themselves, understand? Hiruzen said, his tone brokering no arguments and gaining swift head nods even from the fox. As for your friend here, I will go ahead and register her as an animal companion similar to the dogs of the Inuzuka. I have a spare Hitai-8 for her to wear if she'd like. Hopefully seeing that she is a registered companion will stop any hostilities towards her, but still do be careful. Naruto, I need you to come back tomorrow so we can update your registration. Also you will need to stop by the animal hospital near the Inuzuka compound today. Koko here will need to have a full medical exam before she can be officially registered. Dismissed. The Hokage ordered, although he was still concerned for Naruto. He always had thought of Naruto as his grandson, blood be damned. Naruto and Kakashi bowed in respect and turned and left the office. Once outside, he kneeled down and tied the black-banded Hitai-8 around Koko's neck and both quickly went off to complete the many tasks they had before tomorrow. The first of these tasks was to find new clothes. He was still wearing the shredded remnants of his old clothes since he couldn't find any others that fit at all, and his skills at repairing clothes went about as far as just minor tears. The second was to find someone who could actually teach him Kenjutsu. He might have scrolls on the style, but without someone to help correct his forms, or offer advice it would be difficult to learn. That and he didn't know anything about Kenjutsu. He also hoped to find any book on seals that he could get his hands on. He still had the Kubikiribocho in a storage scroll that Kakashi had let him borrow, but he knew he would have to learn how to do his own seals. Then the final thing was a veterinarian trip for Koko and then food for the both of them. Yep, lots to do. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Having taken the roof with Koko, the two companions made their way to the shopping district of Konoha. Here Naruto's ears seemed to hurt a little from all the noise, but he just tuned it all out and focusing on his task. Having gotten to the store he wanted, he motioned for Koko to stay on the roof and out of sight for a bit. The Jinchuriki felt bad about leaving her there, but he just didn't have the time to be kicked out of the shop. Taking advantage of his new appearance, and hoping word hadn't gotten around about it, he walked right into the shop after coming up his whisker marks. He was immediately greeted by the owner in a cheerful fashion, which was a major change of pace. Had he been recognized he would have either been assaulted or just thrown out. Hey there, Naruto spoke to the shopkeeper. I just returned from a mission and my clothes were pretty much destroyed. Could you help me find clothes in my size? Naruto asked. Absolutely, sir. Please, right this way, the portly man said, glad to have a new customer in his shop. The blue-haired boy browsed through the various clothing racks. He figured since he now had a new look, he should also have a new wardrobe to go with it. The first thing he picked out were several sleeveless fishnet undershirts. To go with those he found a dark blue sleeveless vest, with a white fur collar around the neck. The pockets of the vest would be useful to carry the scrolls he planned on learning to make. For the pants he found some black cargo pants, made of a durable fabric. With all of that and black shinobi sandals, he was set. He already had some training clothes, so he picked up some white tape for wrappings, and 2 white weapon pouches to replace his old ones. Walking up to the counter he quickly paid for everything and sealed it away within the scroll that held his sword. Now all he needed was weapons to fill them. Leaving the store to a happy shopkeeper, Naruto made his way next door to a weapon shop he was familiar with. Normally this show would only sell him blunt kunai and shuriken at ridiculously high prices. Putting his new look to work, he grabbed a couple of sets of high-quality kunai, shuriken. The thing he grabbed the most of though were senbon. He was hoping he could learn to wield them with the aim that Haku had, and if he studied anatomy like Haku had as well he hoped he'd be able to disable an opponent with ease. All he would need was practice. After paying normal prices, which brightened up Naruto's mood considerably, he quickly left the shop and hopped back up to the roofs to Koko. Quickly getting his companion, the two moved quickly to his apartment to drop all of his stuff off. Luck was on Naruto's side. He was worried that the villagers might have destroyed his place, but nothing was amiss. There was only a little extra graffiti and a broken window, which he had become accustomed to. Koko was beyond disgusted with what was in front of her. This was how Naruto lived and was treated in the village. So far he had shown himself to be one of the nicest and most compassionate people she had ever met. He was her companion, he showed her and treated her with respect she had not seen, and she knew she could trust him to protect her life just as she would his. Naruto opened the door, and Koko was decently surprised to see it was an almost spotless apartment. Everything seemed to be tidy, and while the furniture looked rather worn it was also very well taken care of. Koko jumped up on the bed and started to take a nap as Naruto put everything away and went to take a shower. The boy enjoyed his moments of relaxation in the shower. The warm water had a way of making all of the horrible things of the village just wash away. Naruto stood in the shower, contemplating how his life would change from then on until he came to the realization that it was a waste of time. He would make his life to be whatever he wanted. It was how he had lived and he wouldn't change that. Hopping out of the shower, he dried himself off and changed his clothes before getting Koko and heading out the door. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was running along the rooftops, his image completely renewed. He looked like a true shinobi now. He had wrapped tape around his ankles to keep the flapping of his cargo pants to a minimum, as well as around his stomach to hide the seal in case it ever showed itself again. Over the tape he wore the fishnet undershirt and his blue vest. Attached to each thigh was one of his new weapon pouches, the left filled with senbon and the right his kunai and shuriken. In one of the pockets on his vest was the scroll containing just his sword now, as he had left everything back at his apartment. His hitai was tied loosely around his neck, much like Koko's was. On his face was what remained of Haku's mask, his icy blue spiked bangs falling slightly forward under their own weight. Naruto was currently headed towards the training grounds where he knew he would find who he was looking for. Pushing chakra into his nose, he breathed in the air and searched for the scent of oil, steel and strawberries. Nobody else had a scent even similar to his friend's. She was his only friend and he knew she would be able to help with his training. He quickly picked up her scent and made his way to where her team was training. The teen was rather disturbed by the two shinobi wearing green spandex outfits, but he would not be deterred. The boy who wore white seemed to notice his arrival first and turned to face him and Koko as they landed in a tree. "Who goes there? Show yourself," the boy with white eyes called out. Naruto was able to observe that he was a Hyuga as he had the same eyes as Hinata did. He wondered if they were closely related before he forewent the train of thought. Naruto and Koko jumped out of the tree they had been hiding in and walked over to the group, Haku's mask having found its way into an inner pocket in the vest. Sorry to interrupt your training. I was looking for Tenten. I needed to talk to her about something. Naruto said with a sheepish expression on his face and a hand on the back of his head. The Genin team's sensei, who Naruto instantly dubbed Super Mega Fuzzy Eyebrows to match the Nin version of Super Fuzzy Eyebrows next to him, walked up to speak with Naruto. Yash, you may speak to my most youthful student Ten. The flames of youth must burn brightly within you if you know one of my youthful students. The spandex-wearing man shouted out. Naruto's ears once again hurt from the loud noise, but it was easy to ignore. Koko, however, was cowering behind his leg. Naruto quickly translated all of that into, "Hello, feel free to speak with Tenten. A friend of hers is a friend of mine." Or well, that's what the end result of the translation was. Nodding, Naruto with Koko walked over and greeted Tenten. "Hey Ten-chan, miss me?" Naruto asked. Naruto quickly found himself at the edge of a kunai as the girl had a serious expression on her face. "Who the hell are you? Only one person can call me that and you aren't him?" Tenten asked, venom seeping into her lovely voice. Not far away, her team tensed at this and ready to intervene, though the two spandex-clad shinobi were hoping it was all a misunderstanding. Naruto just smiled, though Koko growled a little. "You can put down the kunai, Ten-chan. It's me, Naruto. I kind of activated a bloodline on my last mission and it made me look a bit different is all." Naruto explained, hoping to defuse the situation before anything too extreme happened. He still remembered when she used to go off back at the orphanage before he was kicked out. "Really? Prove it then," the weapons mistress demanded. Naruto smirked a fox-like grin. Moving fast, he bypassed the kunai and got close to her ear where he whispered, "Back in the orphanage I was the one who caught you kissing a picture of Tsunade-sama and praising your love for her." Tenten immediately started imitating a tomato, which her team was very surprised at as they had never known she was capable of such a feat. Whatever this Naruto guy had said must have been beyond embarrassing to get this reaction from her. "Oh okay, so it really is you. What do you want, Naruto-kun?" Tenten inquired, hoping to not have to talk about that incident. It wasn't her fault that she really loved her idol. "Well, I was wondering if you could teach me how to use a sword," the boy asked, gaining his sheepish look again. Tenten looked at the boy in wonder. "Since when did you ever have an interest in kenjutsu? Anyway, let me see this sword of yours so I can decide if I want to teach you or not. By the way, what's with the fox?" the bun-haired girl asked Naruto. She would have taught him anyway, but since he never had an interest before, she figured a blade must have caught his eye. Grinning his fox grin again, Naruto pulled out the scroll from his vest and unsealed Kubikiribocho. Tenten's face remained unfazed for a moment as her brain processed what it was seeing. Slowly realization came to her and her eyes grew wider and wider by the minute. Is that what I think it is?" Tenten asked frantically, stammering, where did you get that?" "This is the Kubikiribocho. In the mission that I had activated my bloodline, we had fought Momochi Zabuza, the previous owner of the blade and one of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinen Shu. He died in the final fight and his dying wish was for me to use his sword. After that I met Koko-chan here, and she liked me enough to come back to Konoha with me and be my nin kitsune companion." Naruto explained. Tenten needed another moment to process everything before she exploded in shouts, "Oh Kami! I can't believe I'm standing next to the Zanbato of the Momochi Zabuza. I can't believe he even gave it to you," Tenten said in her excitement before making a poor attempt to compose herself, as she was still bouncing with excitement. "That settles it. I am teaching. I can't let you embarrass swordsmen everywhere by not knowing how to handle this magnificent blade." Yep, only Ten-chan could get this excited over a sword. Naruto thought to himself. Thanks so much Ten-chan. I'll work as hard as I can. I know you can be a real slave driver than you want to be. Naruto said, shivering when he remembered how she taught forced cough to learn how to throw kunai. He had never been so happy that he was a fast healer. Tenten playfully bopped him on the head, although she had to jump slightly from his new height. The weapon mistress wouldn't admit it, but she had missed his antics. He always seemed to brighten her day, and she had missed him when the matron had kicked him out. They hadn't been able to talk much, what with the matron continuously trying to scare him away and her joining the academy, but they had always been close. Alright then Naruto-kun, I'll work with you every morning from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, so long as I don't have a mission. Normally that's when Guy-sensei and Lee do their crazy morning routine that Neji and me skip. Tenten told her old friend. She was now happy to both be able to see her old friend again, and have a legitimate excuse to miss what Guy and Lee called extra training. Naruto sealed his sword away after he was able to wrestle it away from Tenten, and gave her a quick hug and a promise to spend a time together to catch up. Naruto and Koko left Team Guy to head to the library. After his departure, Tenten was quickly grilled by her team on who the boy was and how she knew him. She refused to give anything away that wasn't necessary, telling them that they met when they were younger and were old childhood friends. Neji seemed to not like this, but Lee and Guy just accepted it and moved on to more training. Naruto had no problems at the library since the librarian didn't recognize him and was actually intimidated by his appearance. Walking through the many sections, he quickly found what he was looking for: scrolls on chakra control exercises, seals, Senbon and human anatomy. Quickly checking out all of the scrolls, Naruto dropped them off at his apartment, as Koko and he had one last stop before their day was over. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. The Inuzuka compound wasn't elegant or gaudy like the Hyuga or the Uchiha compounds. Instead, it was a rather humble group of moderately sized homes intermingled with large open areas for the dogs that the family loved so much to run and play in. The smell of dog quickly assaulted Naruto and Koko's senses before they even reached the compound. The animal hospital was right next door to the compound, for convenience as they were the hospital's #1 group of patients in need of constant care. The blue-haired genin entered the hospital to see a teenage girl sitting at the front desk. She was wearing what looked like a normal medic nin robe with a high collar. Her long hazel hair pulled back into a ponytail, with a few bangs falling over her face. Her red fang tattoos below her eyes marked her as an Inuzuka. He was glad that she was one, as she would understand more about Koko and their relationship better than anyone else would. Inuzuka Hana was rather bored working her shift at the hospital. She loved being a veterinarian, but at the moment it was slow and dull. Kami seemed to answer her prayers, as a tall blue-haired shinobi walked in the door with what looked like a multi-tailed fox. Hello, the mysterious shinobi said, pulling her from her self-musings. Wah, oh, hello, my name is Inuzuka Hana, what can I help you with? She introduced herself, mad at herself for already being semi-rude. The boy seemed not to notice. According to Hokage Ogg, Koko-chan here needs to have a full medical exam before she can be registered as my companion. The shinobi told her. This caught her attention immediately. Companion? Hana questioned. Hi, I met her on a mission recently, and she told me she wanted to be a nin kitsune. She asked to be my companion and I didn't have anything against, so I agreed, kind of like your family does with your nin ken. The blue-haired boy said, hoping that it would be seen as a normal thing and not make a huge issue over it. Kami wasn't willing to help him in it not being questioned. She told you. You can understand her? Hana asked, an inquisitive eyebrow rising. Yep, she can be pretty chatty when it's just me and her. She's also very opinionated and doesn't seem to get along with my teammates right now. The boy said, rubbing the back of his head and showing a smile that looked as if it belonged to the companion more than him. Hana was beyond excited. She had never met anyone, outside of the Inuzukas, who had a bond with an animal like that. She quickly raised herself out of her chair and made her way around the desk and down the hall, motioning for them to follow her, so she needs a checkup. Do you or her know when she last had her shots? The Inuzuka heiress asked. She was probably being too energetic, but the surprises this guy was hitting her with, well, she just couldn't help it. A few yips later, and the man answered for the fox. It seems, as he last owner was always on the move in secluded areas, he never took her to get a checkup. Also, she hates needles, something about being traumatized by when her last owner started learning to use Senbon. The blue-haired shinobi said with a smile. That got a small rise out of the fox, getting a yip and glare for the vixen. Hana giggled a bit before responding, all right then, if you'd follow me, we'll get her all set up. The vet said, motioning for the two to continue to follow her. The two shinobi and vixen walked through a few more hallways before entering an examination room. I suppose we might as well start with the vaccinations, Hana said, looking the fox in the eyes. I'm not going to lie, it will probably hurt a little. The shinobi quickly put his hand in front of the vixen as he softly stroked her head. If you need to, Coco-chan, you can bit down on my hand. I know you hate needles, this will just be your way of getting back at me for making you get them, he said with a soft, caring smile on his face. Hana was stunned. She had never met anyone who was willing to treat their companion so well, and this guy was offering to let her bite his hand after only being together for such a short period of time. The bond between them must have been extremely strong. That is very sweet of you. Oh, I just realized I never got your name. I'm so sorry. By the way, if you wouldn't mind, how long have you two known each other? You seem rather close, Hana asked, not really sure why she kept messing up around the shinobi. She had been working in the hospital for over a year now. Things like this were normally routine. Oh, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Coco-chan and I met 2 weeks ago. Since I'm not close with my teammates, we bonded rather quickly, Naruto said, slowly staring off at the end. Hana, who was currently readying the injections, stopped to focus on what he said. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. They formed a bond in 2 damn weeks. Hana thought to herself in stunned silence. Turning back to the boy, she remembered the name from somewhere but couldn't place it. The more she thought on it, the more it sounded familiar. It soon hit her. Naruto was the orphaned kid in her little brother Kiba's class at the academy. Her little brother had always talked about how the orphan prankster Naruto was the dead last of his class, despite Kiba's grades not exactly being something to brag about either. This Naruto and Kiba's Naruto seemed almost like polar opposites. She then realized she was staring and whirled back around with a small blush on her face to finish to getting everything ready as she tried to cover for herself. Sorry, I guess I was just surprised about how close you are when you haven't known each other long at all, Hana said, the blush slowly fading from her cheeks. Turning around with several syringes ready, she moved over to the fox that was now lying down. I'll get started right way to get it over with. Several whimpers, and multiple bites later, the examination was finished. All done. Coco is in perfect health. I'll send the paperwork to the Hokage's office when I get off my shift, Hana said, quickly putting all the paperwork together and their copies into the hospital's records. While she was focused on this, Naruto and Coco were headed for the door. Thanks so much for everything, Hana-san. Come on, Coco-chan, let's go catch you a rabbit before we head home. Hana went to whirl around, in hopes of stopping him from leaving so quickly, but he was already gone through the door. Damn it, Hana muttered to herself as he turned back around to finish her paperwork. I almost got to ask him. Ask who what? Hana froze at the voice, as it was a voice she had heard since her birth. Turning around with a smile of getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar, Hana spoke, Ka-san, hey. It had been several days since Naruto had begun his training with Tenten. The day after he had asked for the training, Naruto and Coco sat down and quickly designed their own training schedule, making sure that they each trained in both their own skills as well as their teamwork. The schedule turned out to be this. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Naruto would meet with Tenten and train with her for 2 hours working on his kenjutsu. He would then take a break, making sure to feed Koko and himself while he studied Fuinjutsu and anatomy. Shortly after around 11 o'clock, Naruto would leave with Koko to train his Senbon throwing at Team 7's normal training ground. Koko would coach Naruto through the process, as she had watched Haku learn to use the delicate instruments. By 12:30 the rest of the team would show up, as Sakura and Sasuke had long learned not to even both showing up until then, as Kakashi was always that late. When Kakashi would finally arrive, they would complete the D-rank mission for the day before eating lunch and then taijutsu and teamwork practice. Koko had been worked into the normal Team 7 practice, well, whenever it actually happened. Normally Sasuke would complain, Sakura would fawn, and Kakashi would just read his book. In the end they would all just go their separate ways, which left Naruto and Koko 3 hours to work on their teamwork. Following that was 2 hours of chakra control training and finally dinner. After dinner, Naruto would begin to either learn Suiten Jutsu from the scrolls that he obtained from Zabuza or try to learn how to wield his new bloodline using Haku's notes. Naruto had only been able to maintain such a schedule thanks to his massive reserves of both chakra and stamina. This training slowly began to help Koko as well, as it would help her with her endurance and stamina. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was rather pleased with how his training was going. He was progressing extremely fast and was proving to have an excellent aptitude for ninjutsu. After 3 months of training in kenjutsu with Tenten, he would say he was at least decent with the blade. He knew he was no master, that the style he was learning, the Nadare style, which was based on using the massive weight of his blade to deal fast and hard to block strikes. His chakra control had improved to water walking levels that he was able to maintain for a full 2 hours, and he was working on adding the leaf technique with it. So far he was only up to 2 leaves. With his Senbon he was now able to pierce pressure points on just about any target to incapacitate them quickly. He was able to work on it so well by using his shadow clones as mobile targets, though he always felt like he took the hits afterwards. Both the Jinchuriki and his companion had made great strides in their ninjutsu. Koko was able to fire up to 4 bursts of fire for a 3-second duration. Naruto had taken to calling it her Kitsunebi, Fox's Fire. Her speed had also increased, as she was now able to move behind a target, bite or burn them and then leave, which would then force an opening for Naruto. Naruto's ninjutsu had been coming along decently well. He had learned Suiten, Sujinheki, water release, water formation wall Suiten, Suoro no Jutsu, water release, water prison jutsu, as well as Hyoten, Sensatsu Susho, ice release, death by 1,000 needles. He was slowly working on Suiten, Suiryuden no Jutsu, water release, water dragon bullet jutsu, but so far was only able to do it once before he became exhausted. He was also working on one-handed seals as well, but it was slow progress with everything else he was training. Naruto's life had slowly become just eat, sleep and train. The blue-haired genin Jinchuriki was currently in his apartment working on an idea for a new jutsu involving his bloodline with Koko. My short-range potential is rather low except for my sword, Naruto mused out loud, hoping an idea might come to either him or his companion who was currently lying next to him on his bed. Well, what if you made ice claws to increase your taijutsu? If you can make the ice cold enough, it might be able to help freeze the blood of your target when you cut into them. However, that would require you to learn different stances or even a different style of taijutsu, Koko said, the first idea that had come to her mind. Naruto froze for a moment. The last time I had claws. Naruto thought to himself before he mentally shook his head. He couldn't dwell on the past anymore. Those claws were guided by the Kyuubi, this time would be different, and it didn't sound like that bad of an idea either. Before Koko was able to worry as his sudden freeze, he quickly spoke up, maybe I could make claws out of ice. I don't feel cold or receive the effects of low temperatures anymore, so I wouldn't get frostbite, but my enemies would be hurt by the cold as well as the sharpness of the claws. Now all I have to do is create them with raw elemental manipulation before finding the proper hand seals to mold the chakra. I never pick anything easy, do I? Naruto asked, looking at Koko, who just snorted. You wouldn't be you if you did anything easy, Koko said as she laid her head back down on her paws. They had been taking a break early as Tenten had to do a mission. He figured that they needed the break after the continuous 3 months of training. Naruto, however, was not about to just sit around and do nothing. Pushing himself up, he set about doing a project that he had been putting off until his studies had gotten far enough. Summoning a Kage Bushin, Naruto set out gathering his book on seals as well as preparing an ink. It was a special ink that was a mix of chakra-infused ink and his own blood. After the ink was prepared properly, he dismissed the clone, as he had no further use for it other than getting the book to the right page and setting up the pens he would use. Taking one of the pens, he very slowly started to make the seal matrix he needed on the inside of his left wrist. It was a storage seal, as he didn't want to keep lugging around Kubikiribocho on his back. This would allow him to access it at a moment's notice, and his enemies wouldn't even know he had a sword with him at all. After 5 minutes of double-checking he had done it correctly, he used his chakra to activate the seal. The matrix glowed for a moment before it rushed together, forming a ring around the matrix itself, and finished with a light red tinge to it. Naruto picked up Kubikiribocho and sealed it into the seal, then unsealed it and resealed it again. Smiling at his work, he quickly cleaned up everything. He quickly grabbed his book on anatomy and laid down next to Koko, who had fallen fast asleep. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Hana was frustrated. She had been busier than ever before, as it was time to check over the entire kennel so all of the Ninken had up-to-date records. The work wasn't what was bothering her, on the contrary, she was happy to have all of the work. No, it was the fact that she had met an amazing boy, who wasn't much younger than she was, and she had yet to meet him again. And it wasn't for lack of trying either. On her breaks she would try to get away, but something would always come up. It also wasn't helping that her mother had gotten nosy about it and all but interrogated her. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX XXXXXX. Thanks so much for everything, Hana-san. Come on, Coco-chan, let's go catch you a rabbit before we head home. Hana went to whirl around, in hopes of stopping him from leaving so quickly, but he was already gone through the door. Damn it, Hana muttered to herself as he turned back around to finish her paperwork. I almost got to ask him. Ask who what? Hana froze at the voice, as it was a voice she had heard since her birth. Turning around with a smile of getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar, Hana spoke. Ka-san, hey. Sum stood there with a smirk adorning her beautifully feral face. I asked you a question, pup. Ask who, what? Hana didn't exactly know how to answer. Her previous boyfriends had been nothing special, or all that intimate, mainly because her mother had this habit of checking up on them, and after that she would personally speak with them, which ended up scaring off everyone. She knew her mother was just being protective, but she was 17, and she hadn't had any relationship that had gone past the first date. Oh, nothing, Ka-san. Hana said in an almost sheepish voice as she turned her back to the Inuzuka matriarch. She was hoping her mother would drop the subject. So what are you doing her? Hana asked in an attempt to divert the conversation. It didn't work. Uzumaki, Naruto, Sum said just over Hana's shoulders. The fact that her mother was that close to her surprised her for a second. Sum had looked over her shoulder at the paperwork Hana had been fidgeting around with. So who's he? Someone I need to have a chat with. The matriarch said with a feral grin. No, Hana blurted out before she composed herself. I mean, he just came in with a kitsune, that's all. Standard checkup, so she could be placed as his companion. Hana said, having reverted to her professional tone. That caught the older Inuzuka by surprise. No one outside of the Inuzukas carried companions into battle. Sure, anyone could, but no one ever chose to. What also surprised her was the animal that was his companion, a fox. Not exactly a heavy-hitting companion, as they weren't built like the Ninkin of the Inuzukas. Oh, he's got a companion. Tell me about. Soom looked again at the paperwork, the kitsune, Coco.